Hey everybody, what's up? It's McKinsey Criswell here, and welcome back to another great new tutorial. So what I thought I'd do is I'd do a video explaining the keyboard shortcuts and also catch some of the more basic After Effects stuff. And the way that I've found to do that seems to make the most sense, is I'm going to set up a fairly basic 3D composition inside of After Effects once, using the keyboard as little as possible to just show the absolute basics. And then after I do that, I'll run through it again using keyboard shortcuts as I normally would. And that should hopefully help people understand a little better. And also I'll have this URL to send to people who have questions now. So let's get started here. So this is After Effects. And just really quick, I guess the first thing to mention is that if there's any window I have open here, I've got a viewer here, I've got the project window, effects, I've got a render queue, a blank timeline down here, and then also some modules over here. If there's any window that I have that you do not have, there's a couple of things you can do. You can come up here to the corner where we see workspace and reset it from wherever it is right now to reset it to standard, and that should be fairly close to where I have it. You know what, actually I'll just reset mine to standard so that we can all work from the same place. Okay, little simpler. And also, if there is a window that you need that's not here, that we end up needing, you can always activate that window or module by coming up to this window menu and checking whatever it may be that you need. So what we'll go ahead and do is, to get started in After Effects, we'll need a new composition. So a couple of ways to do that. We can come to the composition window and just select new composition. Very easy to do. There is that shortcut there, but we're ignoring shortcuts for this bit. And then there's also just a little window down here in our project panel with a composition button down here. This is a great way to start a new composition just by clicking it. Another cool trick is if you have a little bit of footage, let me see if I can grab something real quick, is select that piece of footage and then drag it to this new composition window. So if we go ahead and do that, we'll get a new composition with the same settings as that clip that we were working with. So that's kind of a cool trick. But for right now, get rid of everything. Okay, get rid of this composition, get rid of the footage, and resize this window. Okay, so for our purposes, what we'll want to do is create a new composition, and we'll just click it, and we'll just choose some basic settings. There are some presets here that are actually fairly outdated, I would say, in my opinion. So I don't typically use those, but what I will do is come up here and just set up some custom settings. We'll do a 1920 by 1080p composition. I usually work at 24 frames a second, occasionally 60, but usually 24. Duration of the composition, for whatever reason, I have this set to 10 minutes, so that's something that happened. We'll just give ourselves about 10-15 seconds to work with. And we can also name the composition. So we'll do mouse composition. Okay, so now we have our composition, and we can just scroll the mouse wheel to zoom in and out. There's also a little module down here that will allow us to select different resolutions. There's also just a fit control. Also, there's actually a rendering control here, so if you ever have any issue with something rendering, you can always just lower that. So if I'm working in full 4K a lot of times in After Effects with a screen recorder going, and maybe it's a rather complicated composition, I'm not really gonna be able to render those full 4K pixels, and a lot of times what I'm looking at is a representation of the 4K file that's like 12 to 25% of the actual resolution. So I'll set it to quarter resolution and work like that, and for the most part you'll be good to go. But we'll go ahead and just set this to half since we're at 50%. And okay, so let's it seems like it's taking a while. Let's do a new solid here, and we'll just make like kind of a black solid. Actually, it doesn't matter what color we make. I'm gonna put a gradient on it anyway, so we'll call this background. Okay, and now we have a new composition. And so what I'll do is I'll come up to Effect. So we'll come up to Effect, Generate Gradient Ramp. This is the After Effects gradient control. There's also like a 4-way gradient control if you need something a little more complicated. But for what I'm doing here, this should do the trick. So let's see. We've got some precision kind of pointers that will allow us to realign the points on the gradient. Really interesting. You can also just drag them or select a specific position with these numbers here. And let's see. Okay, and then we'll make it a radial gradient. And then we'll click on these color palettes to change them. Okay, so let's get like a nice kind of almost red pink down here. Even a little more red. Okay. And then we'll do an orange. Let's see. Kind of a, okay. Yeah, maybe a little more life. A little less, a little more. That looks nice. And we are working in 8 bits, so we'll get a little bit of weird banding in the lines. And a quick way to solve that problem, we'll come up to Effect, do Blur and Sharpen, and we'll grab like a, let's see, we'll do like a box blur. We want to make sure that we repeat the edge pixels. Actually, I'll go ahead and uncheck this and we'll do like a 50% blur, 5 iterations of that. And if we repeat the edge pixels, what we'll see is we have this weird issue with the edges of the layer blurring out as well. And so if we click repeat edge pixels, that will just repeat those pixels to the end of the composition and solve that issue. And we'll also have no more of that weird banding in the lines, so, or in the one color transferring from another. Yikes. Okay, so there also are a few settings down here, just kind of some basic transform controls. And if we hit this little triangle window here, we can access some of those. We have one window with effects, and this is actually like a direct link to all of the effects to animate the values of the effects down here. So for example, if we hit this keyframe on the end color while we're here lined up at the first frame, and then come to maybe the last frame of the composition and change this color from this pink to like a blue. Let's find something that looks good. Maybe we'll just do some more of like a purple. It's not really going to be a lot that looks good. Oh, okay, we'll go to a red. What we'll see is that over time, After Effects is doing some calculations and changing the color over this 15-second composition, and it's rendering those different color values in between. So from the pink to the red, it figures out all of the individual colors that the pink will need to go from to get to red, and it's rendering all of those on their own individual frames here. It's really cool, and we're actually just chipping away at the surface of After Effects here. But that same kind of effect translates to some basic transform controls that we have here. We have a position slider down here so that we can change the position of these layers at any point in time. We have a scale option so that we can scale up or down these compositions. Now the layer's at 50%. Now it's at 100. We have a rotation, rotate at 90 degrees, rotate at 180 degrees, get it back to where it was, just flipped, 360, and we'll have one revolution here. We also have something called an opacity, and if you're not super familiar with video software, you might not know what this does. What this allows us to do is basically just kind of fade out the layer here. Hopefully you know the difference between like a JPEG and a PNG, and that is that a PNG has an alpha channel that makes it transparent. And what we're doing here with the opacity slider is dialing in that transparency. So as you can see here, if I toggle this switch here that turns off the black background, that gives us the checker box for the transparency. as we move this opacity slider, the layer is becoming more or less transparent. So we'll go ahead and set that back to 100% opacity, and you can access these controls at any point by just using these little triangle like drop down menus. And it's really great. Okay. And then what we'll do is, let's see, we'll grab the text tool here, or actually we'll come up to layer, new text, and that'll get us a new text layer, and we can type something here. So we'll type the initials that I use around the internet. Let's see. Okay, and then if we grab this pointer control back up here, we can adjust this. Okay, so we do have this character menu over here that allows us to adjust some of the properties of the text. Again, you can access that through this window menu if you don't have it. But let's see, we'll get kind of a nice font here. The one that I'm using right now, I guess, is Lato. We'll get like a nice white color. I believe that this is part of this particular font does come with Adobe Typekit. Okay. And then you also have like basic bold controls down here, all caps. You have italics controls. You have kind of like the small caps. So let's see, if we type my name like this, what the small caps will do is capitalize all the letters, but make your lowercase letter smaller. You might not be familiar with that. We'll make them all caps for now, and then we also have superscript and subscript if that is necessary for what you're doing. And then also just a text size slider up here. We'll set this to like a solid 250, and a few other more complicated controls for the text. This is supposed to be just kind of basic, so what we'll do is we'll bring up window here. We'll hit the window menu and bring up the align menu down here. And if we can use these buttons to align the text in the center. And then what we'll do is we'll grab another new, we'll do an adjustment layer. Okay. And then we'll come up to effect, we'll do color correction and curves. And this is kind of a cool fluid color editing tool. It's kind of hard to explain if you've never used it, but this is a great way to edit color. And so what we'll do is drag the shadows down, just darken the layer a little bit. And then if we come up here to some of the basic mask controls, if we hold down on this rectangle, what we'll get is the elliptical control. Double click that, and we'll get kind of this nice elliptical mask around the footage. And you'll see it automatically did pull down a window with mask controls. You can access that the same way you would access anything else. Open and close it up, and we have some great mask controls here. So what we'll do is we'll come to subtract. We'll set the mask mode to subtract, and then we'll feather out the mask about 500 pixels. And then if we come to transform, go to the opacity, we can set the opacity to about 60. And now if we hit this little eyeball here, we can see with and without the vignette, and the vignette just gives us kind of an interesting look. So we'll keep that on there, and we're good to go. We've got a really, really basic composition setup, just kind of some animation, little simple animation, and this was set up without using any keyboard shortcuts. So now let's do the same thing and see how quickly we can do it the way that I normally would. And I will try to enunciate what I'm doing so that you can follow along and hopefully learn a little bit. So first of all, we'll just save the composition, Command S. And let's see, I've got a folder in my Google Drive where I store all these. Okay, and we'll do keyboard tutorial, hit enter, hit Command N, get our new composition all set up, call this second comp. Okay, Command Y, get a new layer, come over here to effects, grab the ramp. Okay. And let's see. Whoop. We'll grab some of these colors. Maybe something a little more pinkish. Okay. Orange. Okay. And let's realign these over there and over here. Radial ramp. We'll get that nice box blur. Let's see, we'll do 50, hit tab, go to 5, check that box. And then let's see, we'll keyframe the end color right here, come to the end of the composition, and change it to solid red. Okay, if we hit U down here on the layer, we can see it and adjust and see the gradient and possibly adjust it if we need to. Looks like we're good. A text here, MAKC. See, we'll change it up a little bit. Make it hairline and all caps off. And then let's make it black instead. Let's see, align it. Okay, Command Y again to create another new layer. Grab that with the mask here. Hit F to bring up the mask feathering options. Feather that about 500. See, subtract. Grab that curves effect. And crank it down. Hit T to bring up the opacity. And we'll set that to about 50. Okay, looking good. And just for the fun of it, we'll reset the text to white because I got some time to kill. Okay, and we're good to go now. Set up both the compositions. Here the two are, by comparison. Obviously just a touch different because each design is like a snowflake. You will never be able to recreate the same design twice. And then anyways, if we want to go ahead and just render this out, a couple is pretty easy way to do that. We'll just go to composition, click add to render queue, and what this will do is set up give us the render queue, which is where we can queue projects to render. And I've got an entire another video about that, which you will be directed to at this time in the form of a card on YouTube. If you're watching on mobile, just hit the I and it should roll down the video and you can click it. Yeah, but that's about it for this tutorial. If you enjoyed what you saw, feel free to check out any of the other stuff on my channel or hit me up on social media. Got all the links below in the comments. If you just really want to be awesome, check out my website, MAKC.co. There'll also be a card, as with everything else in this video. But that's it for now, and I'll see you next time.